Well, hello, creatives, community, and kind folks. Welcome to RPG with DBJ. I am your host, DBJ, and we're a little late. Sorry about that. Um, uh, there are some unmentionables that happen when someone is a bit of a broadcaster or what have you, and one of those things, uh, amongst a number of things, like I don't know. Uh, Getting nose goblins and looking for broccoli in the teeth and, and everything. Yeah. Oh, you guys are so funny. Hilarious. Filthy casual. Yeah, yeah. One of those are bio breaks. And anyone who has ever if you've got to get on stage, you've got to be in front of people or something like that, you got to take a bio break. And sometimes they sneak up on you. And we even have had, shall we say, performers relieve themselves on stage. And this is kind of the same thing going live. And it's like, yeah, when you become a gentleman of a certain age, the bladder just doesn't. It's like, yeah, we're going to reduce it by 1 cup per year until it is thimble size. No, yeah, that should be the first thing you guys see in the stream yeah, there's some streams. All right, so I was having some difficulty trying to come up with our theme for this week, and um, slightly clickbaity. It's a little bit of OSR versus modern gaming. I mean, we will talk about those things, but um, the there this comes about where there seems to be a lot more attention on the OSR. I don't know if you'd call it like the rise of the OSR. It really isn't. It's always been around, but as WotC basically punched everybody in the face and shit on their own business, that attention has been starting to divert. We're starting to become more of a scattered community, and or at least attention is being drawn to the scattering of the community that's already been there, and people are going to Pathfinder and Tales of the Valiant, and I've even on this channel we talk about level up 5e, things like. um, Oh, thanks there, Wayne. Yeah, and I do agree that the table of contents thing, I I agree. The intention wasn't to have it that long. Thank you very much. Uh, oops. Ooh, what the? There we go. Sorry, I didn't realize AJ even mentioned the book. Rose Finette. Yeah. Well, oh wow. Oh, wow. That's a good. I'm in good standing there. Comparing the cinematic environment survival book to your second edition wilderness survival guide. By the way, for those who don't know, the the cinematic environments became my what would you call it? It's kind of how I broke into um publishing in the gaming community, and it was, geez, it still is um, a thing that I hold and love dearly. It very much, matter of fact, I'll even put a link to it. I'll put a link to it in the chat if you guys want to see what's being talked about. Um, and there's a number of people who have done reviews of it. See, is there one here? Yeah, there. Okay, there's a review there, down there in the bottom. Okay, but that being said, the in the OSR, the there are two Kickstarters that have they're garnered a lot of Shadow Dark over $1 million. Knave. Let me actually. I'll even share this out here. Knave. Let's see if the Kickstarter. See where the Kickstarter is right now. And see how much money. Ben Milton of Questing Beasts. Yeah, $500,000. Let's go share this. let's share this on the screen. And the reason why I was a little bit like I was trying to figure out how to bring this subject into the gaming sphere and kind of talk about have my own opinions, and you guys can argue with me. I absolutely agree to you guys disputing what I have to say about this rise in OSR gaming and attention to it, and why there seems to be attention to it, and some of the unintended consequences of modern gaming, and how iterative changes happen. And then when you compare one to the other, there's like it seems like a wide gulf, and there's a way to solve that gulf of two. Wayne says Wilderness Survival Guide and Dungeoneer Survival Guide from Second Edition AD&D are great source books. I plan on buying the cinematic environment, specific environment books based off of what I'm reading in your book. Yeah, the cinematic part of it is the game mechanics, and then the environment part is like using it to modify what's happening in your world. So that's kind of why I'm into it. I don't even know why I don't even talk about my own BS on this show. Maybe I could turn it into that and kind of like go into maybe make it a week of game design or something like that. I don't know. I hate to change it in midstream, although it's my own freaking channel. I guess I could change it. But yeah, um, as a matter of fact, this actually deals a lot of this deals with the unintended OSR consequences. I'm over here in Nave, and Nave again is a rules light system. I believe in like Nave. This is a second edition. It's going to be a book, whatnot. I believe in the first edition, like to make a character, you would roll 3d6, and instead of having the classic 6 stat strength, dex, con, etc., between 3 and 18, you would roll 3d6 and pick the lowest die, and that would be your modifier, because we all know that the numbers between 3 and 18 don't matter except to get other numbers, and yet we are still stuck on those things. It's kind of weird. But anyway, one of the things about old school gaming, and today being Monster Monday, and I'm probably going to end up changing that over time here. One of the things about Monster Monday is that um, Gygax and the OSR have a different philosophy on monster design. And a strange part of some of the monster design, because um, there's a myth in the OSR that the minute you fight a monster, you're dead. And honestly, that's not quite the case. Um, Essentially, what happened in the OSR is that a lot of the monsters are what I call puzzle monsters. These are monsters that, if you were to confront these beings head on, you're probably going to get slaughtered, because many of them either or have a combination of an attack or an assault that is extremely difficult to overcome, and um, there's they also have a protection or defense against one or more abilities that the player characters probably have with them: fire, acid, blunt weapons, or something like that. They have some sort of the PCs have some sort of advantage, and a number of these puzzle monsters completely ignore that advantage. So maybe there's a creature that is extremely well protected from, or resistant against, like, say, melee attacks or magical attacks, or having its mind read or something like that. And they come out with these puzzle monsters, and some of them come across as gotchas, right? And so I'm just paging through the Kickstarter right now while we talk about this Knave and some of the other games it's created and such. Although I do find this, I like this artwork. It's very gamified. Characters trying to run up steps to fight a big, I don't know, lizard-like dragon-headed thing, and then there's a portal with tentacles coming out of it, grabbing some NPCs and whatnot. But anyway, one of the design mechanisms in the OSR are that there are some creatures that traditionally were just like completely immune to what the players did. So some avenue, the players were just like, hey, you know what? Our pyromantic wizard is almost useless in this fight. And so in the OSR, exploration was extremely important because you really, really needed to find out what was going to happen around the next corner. You needed to know what was behind that door. You really needed to get as much information as possible, looking for clues and things of that nature. So, anyway, let me page right back up to the top. $531,000. So, yeah, pretty interesting. Good morning, y'all. And during combining this with what Wayne brought up about the this idea about the cinematic environments and AJ talking about it, AJ Pickett and his channel and other people have done reviews on what I've done, is that I tried to pick the middle ground. You really can't change rules. How do I say this? In a modern context, we've become so used to uh, the way the rules have been designed. It is extremely player advantageous as opposed to the OSR, to the point that if you start to delete or block off some of these rules, that players really rebel against those kind of things. You almost never see any kind of encounter where the players cannot um, they cannot achieve success through one or more vectors. What I mean is, like, you very rarely see any creatures currently now with like the ability to have like anti magic, or a creature that is immune to physical assault, or a creature that is completely hidden away no matter what the players do. Everything the players that they can challenge, that can be challenged, the players can challenge it with a couple of die rolls. And even things like and some of these were brutal, like things like level drain and creatures that literally took away advantages that players had. There were many creatures that would destroy their equipment, destroy their treasure, um, get rid of their spells, lock down the players in some manner, and they had to it was less character and more player ingenuity to figure out how to navigate around the thing. For example, there was a very common creature, rot grubs, right? And and I believe it was rot grubs. Let's see if I can find the stat block. Um, mm, not no, because I that's too go old school. Old school, old school. See if I can find, because they were brutal. I mean, that's just an example of rot grubs were brutal, rust monsters were absolutely brutal. All the oozes, all of the oozes were horrible, horrible. Where am I at? Forgotten Realms, wiki. Let's see, ecology. Mm, where is? Oh man, I there's no stats on this. Oh well, okay. It was something like in 6 rounds or something, they would burrow to your heart, and then if you didn't, in you had to use a blade to carve them out of the out of your ally, and if you didn't, you just died. Like it was just a weird thing. Zamar says, if I may, Watsy's unintentionally rounds of public bio breaks has caused people to turn away from their focus, or at least shake their head. And when people did that, they were forced to notice that other options exist. Yeah. Oh, hell's yeah. And um, that has given those who were ready to advertise themselves the chance to do so. Bring it back to topic. At the very least, it really opened people's eyes to other forms of gameplay and looking at how to look at DMing and being a PC. And if I may expand upon what you're mentioning, that I don't believe the OSR is dominating, not in reality, but what I do feel is it was a very fine line. It was the penguins jumping in the water, right? All the penguins line up, and nobody wants to be first, but they all want to get in the water. And I think as we Dungeons and Dragons had always been the gravity that pulled gamers together to go to other games, right? People are introduced to Dungeons and Dragons because it just happens to be the biggest. It's the biggest one on the block, and it is synonymous with role playing to the casuals, right? The casuals out there taking those bio breaks. And I think when some as more people stood up from the table and were like, I gotta go take a break, and we're just like, I don't want to play D&D anymore. Like, right, my feelings are hurt. The game sucks. Blah blah blah. You know what I mean? Feeling all the feels, and they look over and they go, "That's different." Like maybe you know catching feels when my character dies isn't really a thing. Maybe it's more like Jenga, where or Monopoly. And I don't mean that to say that people don't care about their characters in OSR, but it's more I know I'm going to die, but the challenge is surviving long enough to get to at least get as far to the end as possible. And it was a bit more of that in OSR. And also survivability wasn't about um balance. It wasn't, oh, when I turn the corner, whatever is in front of me, one creature to 30, my character can rise to the challenge. It was, I don't know what's going to happen. I could beat 30 creatures, and then the next time I turn the corner, there's one creature that's just going to wipe our asses. And so using things like morale, finding as much lore as possible, getting information was huge in the OSR. Not was, still is. You needed to know who you're going to confront. You needed to find out what the thing around the corner wanted, and establishing some kind of you needed characters who could speak certain languages, knew how to use the ecology of the creatures to deal with them, to appease them. Oh, those are hungry wolves. Well, if we leave the half dead body of the goblin behind, maybe they'll just eat the goblin and gnaw on the bones of that thing, and then we could run around the corner. And so a lot of the problem solving was about players having an ingenuity rather than character sheet options. And that's been a big change. Wayne says modern gaming, dragons are easily slain. Yep. Not even an inconvenience in the pitch strip. Not even an inconvenience. Yeah. Barely an inconvenience. Not even inconvenience in the pitched script. OSR dragons play style and power versus your power made negotiation a very desirable option. And I think uh, um, there's a mythology that players either piled on the rabbit in the OSR, killed the thing, or ran. And it was a lot of variations in the middle because those things became more story based, right? So PCs turn corner, see dragon. It wasn't roll initiative. It was PCs were just like, we need to beg our way out of this. We need to come to a conclusion. Dragon hires players to go make them go on a quest, and that became a story unto itself. Maybe the dragon gave the PCs a piece of equipment or a map or some information, and the PCs are like, hey, what are we going to do when we go back to the dragon? And the PCs are third level, and they're thinking, well, hopefully we'll be like seventh or eighth level by the time we get back to the dragon, and maybe we might get out of our deal, right? It was more story based. It was a lot less just running for your lives and more of appeasing the monsters that came about. Like, for example, do you run back to the pit trap and jump over it, hoping that the skeletons or zombies fall into the pit and get stuck? Is it? Do you leave drag around the dead body of the goblin so that it could be used as carrion to trade with the ghouls that are in the third level of the dungeon and things like that? It was a lot more of a give and take and wheeling and dealing, and even discovering what creatures wanted, leading creatures down dark pathways or around corners or trapping them behind locked doors and things like that. So Mars says, I especially agree with the players are really only given challenges, yeah, that the GM knows their PCs can overcome as a form of simplicity. And it's because of our modern, more cinematic style of play. Absolutely. I agree with you on that because it seems like in a novel or a book or a video game, heroes tend to, like John Wick, heroes tend to have challenges that are either easy, blasting a bunch of nameless, grunts in the forehead with a pistol kind of thing, right? You can take out a bunch of them one by one. Or if there is a challenge, it's probably pretty easy. Like in Professor Dungeon Master even has a video called the magic number, which is 8, and it turns out that mathematically players are more likely than not to succeed because in 5th edition they have a 65% chance of winning. And so losses tend to be more rare than the average of winning, which is 65%. And that's average. So when you start adding in numbers, imagine going to a casino where people win 65% of the time, then you feel like you're losing out on a game when you lose because there are far less losers than winners, as opposed to the OSR. Every time you put a bet down and you're playing blackjack or something in the OSR, it's like lose, 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 lose. Damn, I won! Yeah, and everyone's like happy because it's rare, rather than a streak of winning. Um, where look how many times when player death happens and everyone looks around twiddling their fingers and they don't really know what to do and they get all in their feels. Death's Angel Shadows, like, yeah, but I like level drain and anti magic. Players should know when to run away or learn quickly. Yeah, heck, even the rules for running away are like there's literally like no rules to do it. Yeah, Wayne's like black puddings tend to kill many PCs. A lot of those creatures were designed. Now it's a game, and I joke and call them, Gaxian, Gygaxian monsters, rot grubs, existing because players like to poke dead bodies, gelatinous cubes because players like to run down hallways and not look to see what's going, or they see treasure floating in the room right at the end of the hallway and they want to run towards it. Rust monsters because PCs like to steal every piece of weaponry and equipment they can and carry it on their backs and things like a lot of the monsters were there to remove the advantages the players had. And listen, when a monster, I think it was called the earwig or something, when a monster exists because to literally dig into the ear of a PC because PCs like to listen at doors, that's a bit gamist, right? Like mimics are a gamist monster. There's no real reason for mimics to exist, biological or even arcane wise. I mean, in order for a mimic to live, there would have to be enough adventurers to warrant a creature even existing like that, right? And I know it's silly, but the reason for having those was to keep players cautious and to constantly be exploring their environment. If they found I don't know, people captured in a dungeon that can warn the PCs, please don't touch the treasure chest because there's always that thief that likes to sneak into the next room. And I didn't say rogue, I said thief, that to open up the locked chests and steal the stuff in there. Now you have mimics. Yeah, things are too slanted towards the PCs. When the PCs start off as heroes, the danger is gone. And we've seen, even now, we see very few official content helping dungeon masters, right? Everything is because the cool and sexy are player options, new subclasses, new magic items, everything everything to curtail the game to the players, and very few things designed to give the player an advantage and then take that advantage away. And I don't mean to steal it away, but like, for example, we have cantrips, but we don't have any anti-cantrip cantrips, right? We have player. Um, there was no such thing in the OSR as creating a level 1 through 20 build because there was nothing to build. You were almost the equipment you carried back in the OSR. Um, if you found a rod of immovability and a rod of lordly might and a ring of, I don't know, fire protection or something, and a cloak of elven kind, then that kind of became your character, and you kind of designed your tactics around that. Whereas today, it's all built-in abilities, but there's nothing that stops a paladin's smite. There's nothing that stops a warlock's eldritch, invocations. They there's advantages, but there are no disadvantages. Wayne says the name itself captures the feel of what I think most of us want the hobby to feel and be like. Dungeons and Dragons just sounds medieval and scary, fantastic, exciting, deadly fairy book book heroes, etc. Yeah, yeah, doesn't really do a good job at doing the hero. I'm sorry, the zero to hero thing, because we all think of the hero. Very rarely think of the zero, except in like novels. Zamar says in the old school style of play, it's about how well did I make a character that can fit into this world, and am I smart enough to watch them actually grow up and fulfill, my power fantasy? Yep, yeah. But says such as getting rich, building an army, building a following, becoming influential, becoming a king. Yeah, it was it did turn into something negative where it was just, oh, it's just about killing monsters and stealing their gold. It was a little deeper than that, but you know you got to admit, going into places to kill monsters to take their gold was a thing that people did, but it was to create a legacy. It was to establish a church. There was this keep on the borderlands feel. You had the civilized lands, and your player character would build a fort to defend the world against the evil marauders on the outside of the world. Was it a little black and white? Us versus them a little bit? Yeah. Yeah, it was a little bit like that. Wayne says, I think that's partly why it remains so popular. The name captures imagination so completely. And Wayne goes to say, more role play based indeed, TPJ. 5e takes a lot of role play out of the game with dice rolls, hit an easy target roll. DM provides metadata. I do not like this. The myth in 5e is more RP based. I wish it was. The Yankee says, I forgot it was Monday. You're all right. Oh, no, you're fine. Death Angel Shadow says, when your players make quick work of a young red dragon at a relatively low level, something is clearly wrong. I absolutely agree. And listen, it's strange to think, and I understand how this can hurt us because we have very short amount of time. We work hard. We're out there struggling. We're trying to do our hustle. So when we play games, we want to, many of us feel inadequate in our lives, whether we want to admit it or not. And we very rarely look behind us. We always look up the ladder. Looking back behind us, we very rarely do that. It's like being the 23rd fastest swimmer in the Olympics, and they always look, oh, I can't believe 22 people are faster than me, instead of looking behind and going, oh wow, I swim faster than 8 billion other people right in the world. We don't do that. And in gaming, it's kind of like that too. You're always looking up and going, man, I wish I had more capabilities. I wish I was better. I wish my character was. And the OSR is I hate to say more reality based, but it's more like, you know what? It's not really about how good you are against other people. It's, are you better than you think you are? Are you a little bit smarter? It's incremental successes rather than, oh, I'm just a badass that can't be stopped. A la um, the difference between, say, a John Wick movie and a Steven Seagal movie, right? Like in the old Steven Seagal movies, there was no hint of weakness, whereas in the John Wick movies, we see expertise, but he does have problems. Even though rarely, he does have some problems. Yeah. Wow, wow. Zamara I like to point out. I would like to point out for the 100th time. Okay, yeah. Um, for the 100th time, I had a level 1 monk player who managed to fight three CR 1/8 bandits, okay, and a CR3 bandit captain who had an amulet of 9 lives. Yeah, that's it's not technically game balance, right? Because it, one of the issues that dungeon masters have now in 5th edition is, well, game balance, and it's like, well, it's not game balance. It's bringing most of the monsters are not of a level anywhere near the level comparable to the player characters. It just isn't. Um, there are very few options for monster interaction. There are very few variations of those same monsters, and you almost it. This is a strange thing to say, but I think dungeon masters are afraid, have trouble because the challenge rating you would have to make something balanced feels like you're trying to overkill your players. So just looking at the numbers and the stats, and you grab a book and you look down for a dungeon master, you're like, man, I want them to fight a dragon, but I feel like mathematically I need to add 3 dragons and 15 NPC, mid-level monsters, just I mean, just to fight a couple of a couple of 4 or 5 7th or 8th level PCs, right? It's not balance, it's the balancing is actually all on the DM side, and that's horrible game unintended consequence of game design. In the OSR, one monster can challenge a whole group, and it was almost, you had to go into dungeons with like 8 to 12 characters. You had 4 players, and they each had an extra like 2 NPCs with them as a henchmen and retainers and things like that. And you might get out with half of them left alive, right? Uh, yeah. The End King says maybe 5e wants to encourage heroic play, but it's not courage when running is the worst option every time. Yeah, running away should be a great option, making bravery stand out. Absolutely agree. And how do I say this? Running away, I think, sounds cowardly rather than, how do I explain this? I guess there's degrees of doing it, but the degree we think about when you call about running away is literally doing the hands over the head, asses and elbows, like, you know it's it's not necessarily like that. It could be running through a room and locking the door behind you because you don't want to get in a all out fight with the monsters that's in the cave. Right? It might be, um getting into a fight and then backing off and letting maybe the monster lives like a sarlacc pit kind of thing, right? You don't fight the sarlacc pit, you just get away from it. It's not killing it, it's let's maneuver around the thing and keep on going about our way. It's all the random encounters that happen on your way to the front door of the adventure, and going, we don't want to get into a bunch of random encounters, not because they're boring, but because they are a resource drain, and it doesn't benefit us as player characters to fight yet another band of ogres because we want to get to the front door of the crypt. And if we fight these ogres, yeah, they may follow us, but there's no reason to get in a protracted battle, right? It's or there's the escalation of danger. Oh, it's an ogre and a couple of goblins. We need to get out of here because they're going to call for reinforcements. Noise in dungeons was a danger because you could easily kill a monster, get into a battle, cause noise that would cause other random monsters to want to come towards where you're at to investigate, reinforce, or something. So yeah, defeating a thing was actually special rather than it being a foregone conclusion because we know the dungeon master is not going to kill my character. And what I find, and I was trying to figure out how to word this, and I thought I wanted to talk about taboo subjects, things that happen, basically things that happen in gaming all the time, but we just don't give it any credence. And one of those things is character death. I don't know why role playing games don't don't talk about and navigate around character death. It's, oh, let's play the game, and then characters die, and player characters are like pissed, and it's like, well, why are you playing the game? Like, what, you decided to play the game. Everyone says there should be a threat to, well, if you play a game, there should be a threat of death, and then when characters die, player characters want to like table flip and go, well, this game sucks. And I'm thinking, well, then play a game where you don't die. And there are games where you can't die there. And I'm gonna get into the meta of what character death means mechanically versus logically in a narrative. But anyway, Zamar mentions, don't get me wrong, PC should feel special. I agree. Like, they are not cut from the same cloth of the common folk. Exactly. But there's a difference between cut above the rest and a god amongst men. Yes. I think I would categorize what you're saying, Zamara, as like specialist. So there used to be niche protection. The fighter went in front of the battle, and no other character class was as good at stepping forward and beating ass as the fighter types. And then behind that, you had like clerics. Clerics could get in a fight, but clerics were so supportive that no other character class could support other characters and boost them and fight basically shoulder to shoulder, side by side, like the cleric could. The thief, which became the rogue, was such a like a glass cannon where the thief could sneak attack and backstab creatures, but if that creature turned around and backslap them, they were gone. The thief was supposed to be quiet, sneaky, disarming traps, highly skilled, because no one else was as skilled as they were. And it was in that way, like Zamar is bringing up, that those characters felt special. Yes, the fighter could stand up to the ogre, and I could fight you one-on-one and kind of stand my ground a little bit. Whereas the wizard is going to get killed. The wizard with 5 hit points is dead, right? The wizard would never stand next shoulder to shoulder with the fighter unless they had to, or it had to be creative. Even the fighter was like, hey, I can step up and be very powerful, but then a bard, well, this old school, there wasn't a bard, but a face character could go, no, 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 no. We're going to get killed if we fight these 30 hobgoblins plus all their dire wolves and wargs, and then they're flying with pterodactyls. We need to wheel and deal. Let me step up and let me shine and let me be special. Wayne says, many a great military commander has decided engagement at this time is not a good option. Running means you live to develop and execute a better plan. As a matter of fact, not only that, but circumstances in the OSR lend themselves to be far more narrative than they are today. So it came across, random monsters and random attacks and things like that came across as air quote random, but really what was happening is the world was alive. And if you came across a band of 5 hobgoblins in a war party, the game told you, you may see 5 now, but if you get in a fight, there's going to be 30 more. We need to sneak past them and not fight them because we need to get behind enemy lines. Or we know there's a dragon up in that mountain. We need to get into the mountain, but we don't want to fight things because they're going to just alert the dragon. And the dragon's going to, marshal the forces and come after us, right? It was we're going to go into the room with the animated statues, but destroying the statues is important. The important thing is we need to get to the door on the other side because that's where the good stuff is at, right? Yeah, Des Angel says, yeah, exactly. That should be, they should at most be just above an average commoner. And most of them are specialists. They're good at something. And to let them shine. So there were lots of things for them to shine at. Great. My thief can pick pockets and disarm locks and traps. Give me a bunch of pockets and locks and traps to put my fingers in, right? The Yan King says, I think anger at character death is sometimes just poor sportsmanship. I say that because I get livid every time until I relax a bit. No. I'm not saying. Oh, let me be a little bit more specific. Even though Yan King says, yeah, I have the maturity to admit that. Yeah. Yeah, it's maturity to admit our immaturity, right? I'm not saying that we shouldn't have those feelings. That's not what I mean. What I mean is that this. this deals with a bigger subject about our own society here in the States and even going across the world abroad. Feelings are real, and it is okay for us to have those feelings. It's the behavior that goes with the feelings, right? It's the viral videos of a grown man acting like a baby on a plane because a baby on the plane is crying. So now the grown man starts crying. It's the individual that gets upset at fast food places because their order is wrong and they want to throw food and milkshakes at the people who work there because your feelings are hurt. It's the behavior that comes along with it, right? It's not the feelings, it's the behavior. And I think these games in a kind of strange way teach us a lot of things, and one of those is dealing with our feelings, right? Um so that's my soapbox. I'll step down, you guys can step up on it. Wayne says only immature people get caught up so deeply into the character they flip out if it dies in the story. Do they melt down when a character dies in film or books? Yeah, PCs aren't us, they're a story element. Yeah, they and the OSR had us thinking legacy. You knew when you walked into the dungeon and you had like 3 retainers, you knew half of them weren't going to make it out. And maybe, just maybe, your main character was going to pass on that stuff to your 0 level character that all of a sudden became 2nd level because you needed a replacement character, right? It was the damn, my character died, and the PCs rescue somebody trapped in the dungeon. That person that was trapped in the dungeons becomes the new PC. We all accepted the fact that when someone's sister goes into the dungeon as a 3rd level druid and dies, that their 3rd level ranger brother is going to go avenge them because they needed another character right away, right? That was a thing. Also, character death doesn't necessarily need to be death. Mechanically, character death is only when you can no longer use your character sheet. When narratively and mechanically your character is no longer viable as a mechanism to play in the game. So death doesn't necessarily need to be death. Um, Kids on Bikes and Tales from the Loop and Things from the Flood, you play children. Well, Things from the Flood, your character could die. But Tales from the Loop, as a child, your character cannot die. Now, can they be put on permanent punishment? Can your family move away? Could you flunk out of school and be punished or whatever, or go to a juvenile detention, which means your character is dead, no longer viable? Yes. And so character death sometimes in D&D didn't have to be dead. In the OSR, sometimes did we fudge a little bit and go, all right, well, your character became enslaved and taken down into the drow pits, and now your character is no longer usable unless you go rescue them? Yeah, we did that. We did that a lot. Did they fall off a boat and drown, but really they were captured or saved by a siren and taken to a distant island or underwater kingdom that we might see 3 levels later in the game or something? Yeah, we did that a lot. Death Angel says some players today are far too attached to their characters. You should not be playing yourself, but with superheroic abilities. In D&D, yeah. I like to escape reality for a few hours, not play myself. Yeah, but it is a little bit. There's a big chunk of heroism. We like to see ourselves as the hero, right? We don't like we don't think of ourselves as the villain in somebody else's story. We think of ourselves as the hero, and it's problematic when we are known as the villain in someone else's story. And I think in Dungeons and Dragons, when the more we think of us in armor or spells or like with horns casting magic and all that, being would I like to think of myself with 50 pounds of more pure muscle and 3% body fat? I imagine myself that way plenty of times. I rock myself to sleep that way, right? But on the other hand, if you're deciding to play a game where death is on the table, um, you should understand that the problem is success is so common, like winning a lottery with a 65% chance and greater, that death and failure become so rare that when players actually roll dice and fail numbers, we feel like there's something wrong with the game and something wrong with us, rather than shrugging your shoulders and going, well, failure's part of It's just part of the adventure, right? Fail roll a d20, and three times in a row you fail, and people all of a sudden are like, "This game is stupid." Yeah, Wayne says, doesn't mean we don't feel something when that happens. Yeah, we are invested in the story after all, but a healthy detachment is needed. Keyword healthy. Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah, yeah. I think being healthy, and I think role playing. Here's another thing: role playing games can are we know today, despite all the stupidity of the satanic panic, that role playing itself, not the games, but role play itself, helps people deal with things. I mean, it's literally a tool to help people through mental issues. And let's not let's not get it twisted. We as a community are role players. That means we automatically have certain mental issues, right? We have social problems and interactions, and every single human being on the planet is on the spectrum. um Given a certain time of day or night, uh, our spectrum diving ability and our percentages move up and down all day long, right? From stresses and problems and overthinking and tired and hungry to, more intrinsic things about our background and our lives and thinking about the future and all that stuff. So it does help us in role playing to like have a place for us to be the hero. But I think being the hero all the time, every time, whenever we do something, period, I think is unhealthy. I think in a modern context, it teaches people that the world revolves around them, and everyone who interrupts that world is wrong, rather than going, oh, those people over there that heck I don't even agree with, they don't bother me and I don't bother them, and it's okay if they exist and I exist. Just like in gaming, it's okay that my character isn't a badass thief and sneak, even though I'm playing a fighter and the other person's playing a rogue, right? It's okay that my paladin doesn't have the highest smite numbers as something I saw online. I'm playing my own character. That's it. Uh, Jared Piedmont says, good day. I love monsters that have the ability to kill a character instantly. That's something I like about OSR monsters. You were forced to respect them and take them seriously. Yeah, and JP, you mentioned earlier that a lot of those monsters were literally designed that way. Like you didn't fight shadows one on one. You didn't fight wraiths with level drain one on one and shadows that drain your strength. You didn't fight Medusas one on one. That was the whole point of the puzzle monster. The Medusa, a classic mythological puzzle monster, was don't look it in the eye. And today you've got players who could basically, without flinching, look a Medusa right in the eye without turning to stone and kill it. Right? I mean, there are character builds where that really isn't a threat any longer. Whereas knowing how to get around the monster. Yes, if you look it in the eye, you would be turned to stone, and we don't have a way to get you from being petrified. Oh, we're going to have to use mirrors. We're going to have to trick it to turning itself into stone, or looking into a pond, or looking into a mirror and seeing its own face. We have to be creative in confronting the thing. Maybe the rogue attacks it and then has the Medusa chase after the rogue while we go behind and slam, knock down the stone outcropping to trap it in a cave or something like that. Wayne says, I was sad when Boromir died. It didn't affect my health or make me want to make me want a safe space, though I had to borrow Linus's blanket a bit. Yes. It's one of the greatest. I don't know how to explain this. The Boromir death scene is I don't know. It hits me in the feels too, man. It's like a testosterone fueled, like, yeah, badass, like sacrifice your life for your laying down your life for your values kind of thing, or to appease your guilt, or laying down your life for a friend kind of thing. God, I don't know. Because it makes you wonder, like, could I, would I ever do that? Yeah, it hits me in the feels all the time. Um, there's a scene in the movie Black Hawk Down that just like gets me every time when the helicopter's flying overhead and one of the soldiers got captured and they're like blasting over the loudspeakers like we will not leave you behind, you know, sergeant or whatever the soldier's name was is like, we are here, we're going to get, and it was two guys who were just like, let me jump down there and protect them, and the commanders are like, I don't know, it's going to be it's a, you're probably going to die, and they're like, yeah. What the heck was that? Feng shui. um Jared says if you foreshadow the death effect and how it functions, players play in a more existential manner and no longer care about raising their AC and hit points. Now they care about location, location, location. Yeah, and also, um, like, why don't we talk about death in role playing games? Like, I don't mean just mechanical effects. I'm talking like what happens in a game. What if you have a 2 3 hour session and 15 minutes into the game, somebody you really want to have in your game, somebody you love their energy, they love being there, all the other people are feeling them being in your game, and then their character dies. Now what? What do you do? Do you just say, do they click off the Zoom channel and go, up, sorry, Google Meets or whatever it is, you know, Facebook time, Discord or whatever. Character's dead. I guess I'll go, right? But that person's value added to you, to your life. You want them to stay. So do we hem and haw and go, well, you got to make a first level character, you know, even though everyone's seventh level or whatever. And then you got to come up with why don't we have a rule for that? Or rules for that, you know? It's just weird. Z says, and that reminds me, because of the modern style of play, the ability to DM the ability to DM searching for information of what is in a dungeon has been lost. The purpose of a wizard's tower, yeah, the purpose of a wizard's tower was, um, a wizard was not the guy you go to for magic. Yeah, they were the person you go to for esoteric knowledge. You're, yeah, absolutely right. That's why it was so expensive to hire sages in the OSR. You got your ill-gotten gains in the borderlands, right? You come back to the keep, Hamlet, village of Hamlet. You spent some cash. You tried to hire a sage who could give you more information about the next dungeon because you never wanted to go in there blind. And it was knowledge, it was esoteric knowledge. They were your library. Then you would go off and do stuff while they researched for you. Absolutely. And you paid them like a lot of, it was a lot of gold exchange to go, listen, we're going to go adventuring. You do some knowledge for us to find out about the underwater kingdom. When we get back, we need to have a laundry list of things to look out for. Thanks for doing this for us. Oh, by the way, we came back with even more goods and things and to trade for you, some gems and artwork and a statuette and some more gold. And then we're going to go adventuring again and come back and such. I agree with you, Z. Absolutely agree. The N King says some subscribe to the school of thought that every character you make is some version of you, even if it's just a fraction of who you could be. Y- y- yes, I mean, even when we play characters that are completely different than us, aren't we really just playing the version of us that would have existed if it wasn't for us existing today? You know, it's the divergent tree of time kind of thing. Like, well, in a different world, I would be extremely beautiful and handsome and smart and sexy and battle ready and never fearful and but you know what I mean? Like if I lived in a fantasy world, my ass would be a track star because I'd run all the time, right? You know, Wayne says in first and second edition, surviving to level 5 was a huge milestone. Yes, most characters retired by age by level 10. I mean, yes, you went above. You could go to level 20 and actually above for some games, but level 10 was capstone, not 20. Anyway, monsters ate a lot more of us back then. Yeah, think of how hard a boule would be to take on if players in it, um, if played to its optimum abilities, or dragons. Um, I remember we in my old gaming group when we were like teenagers, mid 20s, and we had a competition on who could play the most badass dragon in a game. And the one that got me was, and I think this was a stolen idea. We played against a dungeon master where we had to go up against a black dragon, and we didn't know that there were. So we're fighting this black dragon, and black dragons, swamp, that kind of thing, and the black dragon had been terrorizing a region that had other creatures in it. So the other creatures were running out of the way, and the black dragon was there. We had to go into the swamp, and the twist was there were two black dragons, and they were twins, and they lived together. And one black dragon would be home, and the other one would go out raging and ravaging, and they would take turns and things like that. And we didn't know. So every time we tried to attack the black dragon, we were like, how come we're not hurting it? It was the other black dragon. And mind you, the two black dragons had like a hag, and the hag had like potions thing, and one would go away and heal while the other one was fighting us. It was crazy. And we were like, is the dragon healing like a troll? And it was a crazy story. And we were just like, oh shit, we get our ass kicked. It just felt like every time we hit it, I mean, the dungeon master wasn't being unfair. They were being slick and tricky, and was like, no, you don't see any wounds on the dragon. We were just like, what the did it just heal? Did it fly away and heal? Did it just slink down into the murk and mud and heal from the? We didn't figure it out. It was like, nope, it was two black dragons. And they knew it. Like the two dragons were like, no, 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 no. We want to keep the secret going. There's one of us. And the minute people in the community start realizing it was just one dragon, believing it, they just went along with it, and were like, yeah. I was like, that's crazy. I had one, but I don't want to brag about that one. Zamara says, one of my greatest accomplishments as a hardcore GM was giving my players situation after situation that they managed to win, that they could win, but wearing them down until when they came across that seventh consecutive easily winnable battle, they sat down and said, sorry, they are on their own. We need to rest, or we will kill ourselves. Off of easy battles. Yeah. And sometimes, like in the OSR, if things became too easy, we kind of looked around like, there's something wrong here, right? Because the expectation was to lose. It was, there's no easy battles. Or you cherish the easy ones. Oh, 3 goblins and we're 7th level? Pretty easy, right? Whereas we always knew there was something around the corner. So I agree with you there, Z. Yeah. Desert Angel Shadow says, a room full of realistic statues, exsanguinated remains in various stages of decay, mummified corpses, rusted weapons litter the floor, exceptionally clean passageways. Yeah, listen, and the way you said that, how many of us understand what the hell's going on with just these quotes here? A room full of realistic statues. Anybody? There's at least 2, if not 3 creatures we already know to look for. Medusa, basilisk, anyone? Cockatrice, maybe? Exsanguinated remains in various stages of decay. Yeah, hello. Vampires, maybe some of the life-draining monsters, but at least vampires, right? There's others out there. Yeah, Gugon or Medusa. Yep, Gorgons. Forgot about them. The gas-breathing, petrifying monster, right? But room full of realistic statues. PCs get hooked onto Medusa, turn the corner, and there's I don't know what you call bronze, brass, copper plated bull-like creature breathing smoke or something. Yeah. Mummified corpses, life draining. Rusted weapons litter the floor. Really? Rust monsters? We all know that. Exceptionally clean passageways. Hello, gelatinous. How are you today? Yeah, we love it. Vampire, some undead, or wizard specializing in necrotic magic. But that's the point. We would see all of these clues ahead of our adventuring. It was a foreshadow. It was the dungeon master going, guys, you need to take a look at this. And we don't really see that today, especially like the OSR equipment that we love to have with us. Powder, marbles, feathers, chickens, 10-foot poles, rope, metal filings. We would walk around. We were like little detectives. We'd walk around with all that stuff. Now, Zamara says rusted weapons is oozes and water-based monsters and rust monsters. Yep, yep. But what is it, right? What is it that's happening? It's the it's the un. You're given a clue, but it's still the unknown. And today, like me mentioning off a lot of those creatures, we kind of know what's going on. We don't really have. We've never really gotten a brand new group of Gaxian creatures, mainly because all the onus has been moved to character capabilities rather than character equipment and such. So there are no monsters that take away a paladin's smite. There are nearly zero monsters that stop a barbarian from raging. You know, there are no monsters that take away a rogue's ability to sneak attack. But if you had magic items and magical spells, there were plenty of creatures that just didn't work on them at all. Creatures that went ethereal, you couldn't hurt them. I mean, unless you had an armor of etherealness or a weapon that could harm ethereal, you just couldn't hurt them. There were creatures that could only be hurt by magic weapons. You know, it wasn't resistance; it was just your weapon just didn't hurt them at all. They're werewolves. Yeah, Wayne says dragon attacks, breath, bite you in half, wing buffet, tail whip, crushing stomp. Yeah, yeah, all that. Yeah, it would take a small army to actually kill one. That's not counting his flyby attacks or magical abilities. Yep. And hey Wayne, I'm gonna add an extra part in there. Dragons had two other things. They had a lair and they had treasure. And in their lair, they were kings. And I don't mean lair actions. I'm talking tunnels they could fly through and they knocking stalagmites and stalactites off the ceiling to fall onto the party, all of their underlings that would surround them and be an army for them, their magic items like potions and rings and things. I literally rolled up a dragon that had potions of healing and had a ring of invisibility, and the dragon wore had a halter belt and had pouches with boulders in it, and the dragon would fly up this huge, massive cavern and fly up to the top and just throw rocks at the PCs, and hadn't even breathed yet. And at one point, the dragon flew down to its treasure, put the ring on, and disappeared. And they were just like, "What the hell?" Yeah, yeah. Clean passageway. Yep. Will this even show up? Nope, it won't show up. Yeah. Wayne says caltrops, chalk, string, spikes, and hammer. Yes, we had little room for actual treasure. Eh? We sure did, because we carried all that extra stuff. I mean, I don't know how it's pronounced. Pitons, Pitons. Pittons. What are they called? Anyway, the spikes you drove used for rock climbing that you would drive into rock. We wedged doors open and close with those damn things all the time. Yeah. Shit. Yeah, the Yankee said ghosts in 5e are vulnerable to wedgies and swirlies. Lick the fingers and wedgies. Ghost is like, whoa, as the fighter grabs the undies and rips them up high. Oh shit, yeah. Wayne's like, yeah, bring back undead innate abilities to be feared. Yeah, there's nothing fearful about those things anymore. Not really, right? And listen, I get that what the fear in gaming is that the players don't have anything to do. If they get paralyzed by ghouls back in the day, you were literally paralyzed so long you couldn't do anything. But I think there's an unintended consequence between the mechanisms we have today and the air quotes feeling like you're useless because you were paralyzed for 1 minute and not doing anything. First of all, I think there's too many actions happening, and I think it has broken. We are so used to the 3 action economy now that it has broken the tide of the flow of action. So let me give you an example. Back in the old days, we didn't have 3 actions per round unless you were very high level. Instead, what happened was everybody had an action, and you round robined it we rolled for initiative. Don't get me wrong. But basically, everyone had one action, and you would round robin it over and over and over again. So it came back to you so quick that you didn't have a chance to tune out. So you get 4 players in a dungeon master. That means you have to go through 5 stages of 3 actions per person, which is 12 to 15 different things at a minimum before it got back to you, for you to have to be complicated to take 3 actions because you're reacting to everything that happened before you. Whereas if you had one action, I'm going to move, I'm going to attack, I'm going to dodge, I'm going to do this, boom, 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 back to you again. What are you going to do? Great. Since I moved, I'm behind cover, I'm going to cast a spell. Great. What do you do, fighter? Okay, I attacked before. I'm going to stay there and attack again. Okay, rogue, what are you doing? I'm going to sneak behind and blah, 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 climb up the thing. Okay, that's your action. What are you going to do? That, and it went boom, boom. Now with 3 action economy, it's like, I do my thing, then I'm going to do my other thing. Oh, also with this thing I'm going to do the thing. How does it interact with that thing you did before? Yeah. Uh, Zamar says, I proved that you didn't need weapons in 5e by making a character 0 level and went into the GM's challenge with nothing but a 10-foot pole, with no other planning time and convincing. Okay. Everyone convincing everyone to leave behind their weapons. We won against a bunch of undead, came out armed to the gills, and no player deaths, with only one of us being hit once. Ouch. But that was me using old school thinking. Yeah. Yeah. You'd be surprised with just some creativity. I mean, I don't necessarily think we should like roll up a newspaper and smack our players on the nose to teach them a thing, but I do think there's some OSR, like, getting rid of dark vision, having timers engaged in real world timers. Every hour something happens, having random encounter lists and things of that nature. I don't know, taking the pressure off of the dungeon master to come up with a narrative, fully complete story. Heck, morale was a gamified mechanism to force your enemies to flee, so you didn't have to get into a protracted battle because the wizard has 6 spell slots and uses 3 of them, and is going, you know what? If we keep fighting, I'm gonna have to use all my spells, and we got to walk into the next region, right? And there's no time for us to rest. Oh man, the Ant King says, I have a supreme love of both the ring and the grudge. Yeah, I feel like not only should ghosts be stronger, they should be good enough to be an entire chapter of a campaign. I agree with you there. Yeah, those Asian horror didn't have a way out. Basically, it was like, no, they're ghosts and they're going to frighten you to death, and that's it. Yeah, Death Angel Shadow says, some of the things I like about Shadow Dark: equipment slots, no dark vision, torches burn out. Me too, and I think as we've been talking, there's a reason for that. I think even in Ben Milton's Knave, I love the fact that a he's got equipment slot that represents more than equipment slots. I believe I'm probably wrong on this, but anyway, one of the OSR games, and I believe it's Knave, but correct me if I'm wrong, your equipment slots are like your hit points, and it's your capabilities. So every slot you fill, like if you get a magical ability, it fills an equipment slot. And then when you take damage, I think if you take damage less than 0, the damage starts coming off of your equipment slots. So you start losing your magical abilities, you start losing your equipment, you start losing, and it's like, I mean, narratively, I could see what it's like. It's almost like you're the monsters tearing at your stuff and your body and throwing things away and breaking it and destroying it. It could represent fear. I don't have the ability to get to my burning hand spell because I've been so demoralized or something like that. I like that idea. I like equipment slots idea. Death Angel says, even if it doesn't become my default game, I will likely steal some ideas. Yeah, maybe we'll talk about those ideas we can steal from these games. Yeah, excuse me. Wayne says a beautiful illustration of why I say five easy mode and not five fifth edition. Yeah, yeah. Death Angel says it's one of those two, possibly both. And mind you, the OSR has been doing this for a long time. It's not new. It's it's recontextualizing what was already there, like the dark vision thing, right? It's there is a special feeling when you are in a dome of light. Any of you who've ever gone camping, you know this. You sit in front of a fire, you have a lantern, you've got a flashlight, you're in a dome of light, and that light illuminates where you're at. Great, I get to see what's going on. Everything outside that dome of light is dark. All you hear are noises. Imagine being in a dome of light. I've got torches, we got a lantern. You're down in a dungeon, you hear noises. Out of that noises, you hear the battle cries of humanoids. They come running at you. 2, 3, 4 come into the light. You start fighting them. You hear more noises. But guess what? You don't know what's there. How many are there? What are they doing? Then you hear a growl. Suddenly a snarling direwolf comes into view, red eyes gleaming. But deep in the darkness, all you see are more eyes. Like, what the hell? Right? Darkness is supposed to be fear. It's why we love light as human beings, right? Darkness is a fear until our eyes adjust. And even then, we want our eyes to adjust because we're afraid of the dark. We want to know what's out there, Oops, I think I hit the ball. Anyway, here we go. Sorry, there's the comment, and I'll go back to what you guys were saying here. Zamara says, Knave, spellcasters need open equipment slots because when they cast a spell, they get exhausted and can't carry as much. Exactly. Of course, right? It's the why does the wizard not carry armor and heavy weapons? That's the narrative reason why. You don't often see that. Whereas the fighter, ranger, explorer has the backpack full of stuff because they don't have to carry books and be free to cast their magic and stuff. It's getting very late. The End King. Maybe a spellcaster gets so scared they forgot to read the arcane language of spells. It's like how bilingual people switch their native tongue in extreme stress. Yeah. You got smashed by the ogre. Now you're at -2 hit points. Get rid of 2 things in your equipment slot, and you're like, oh, I need that. I'll get rid of my detect magic spell, and I'll get rid of my Tensor's floating disc. Death Angel says, I can't wait to play Fear of the Dark for my players when the torches start to burn out. Yeah, it's time. It's very late. I got excited. Yeah. Yes. Yeah, shoot, man, you're right, DVJ. You need to love with your heart, and for all else, get the hell back to work. Knaves, commoners, casuals, guys. Have a great one. We'll talk about that. Yes, tomorrow is Level Up. I don't know why I picked Tuesday. It was a random day. Anyway, Level Up 5th edition tomorrow. We'll deep dive into something like this for Level Up. It exists out there some way, and then we'll get to go. So, all right, guys, have a great one. Thank you very much. Have a great day. I will see thee later. Thank you there, Wayne. Always pleasurable benefit. I'm stealing too much of your time, so I very appreciate it. Thank you. Bye. Peace.